We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. It. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Good evening, Dr. Jared Johnson. What was that you were asking me before I clicked the live button? Asking me if I had what? What is it?
It's a liquid death. They make that water.
Okay.
It's the Arnold Palmer version.
An Arnold Palmer liquid death can of water.
It's called Dead Billionaire. Says it has vitamins in it.
I think I got into the wrong business. That's the business I should get into. Just like bottled water with like a fancy sort of, label on it or whatever. I think, oh my God, here we go.
What happened?
I've lost your picture.
Oh yeah. Hold on. Hold on. It's the iPad. Hold on. Let me get it back. Oh, I see what happened here. Hold on.
All right.
There we go. Good.
Solid.
I was just trying to see. So I'm using the iPad, folks. First time. I can't see, unfortunately, because Apple sucks. I can't see the comments and see the. So I was trying to see if I could do both, but apparently I
can't even see the comments on a fan-led Thursday.
Yeah, I'm flying blind here, brother. You're gonna have to do this for me. But I got vitamins in my drink, so okay. Well, then I'll leave, dude.
At least you're gonna have plenty of vitamins tonight. You might need it. I don't know. Again, it's fan-led Thursday, so you guys are gonna drive the show. Whatever topics, whatever things you want us to talk about, make sure you throw it in the comments, and please do it early because we know how this works. We start to get the conversation going here. A lot of comments come in, and then I end up missing about 90% of them. On the last show, we had, I don't know, like 550 comments during an hour-long show, and it's impossible to get to all of that stuff. So I guess, Jared, the first thing we need to start with is this shitty Facebook stream going to go down? It wasn't Facebook. That's a Jared issue.
Yeah, that wasn't me. I was just checking.
That's a Jared issue. Let's talk about signing day. It's been a pretty big couple days here for the Michigan Wolverines. They signed 27 new Wolverines to the roster. And Jared, you're looking at some of the guys that are signing, the work that Sherrone Moore has done on the recruiting trail. Obviously, he's facing some heat and some pressure because people don't think Michigan is where it should be in terms of getting to the college football playoff. But Jared, you and I talked about this before we went live. In terms of the work he's doing on the recruiting trail, Sherrone Moore is absolutely knocking it out of the park. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it starts with the headliner, Savion Hyder, the 5-star running back who is as good as advertised. You talk about Carter Meadows, a guy who's an edge rusher, 6'6", 230 pounds. Sherrone Moore talked about him today and said he's got the makings of a future first-round pick. And then you go down the list, man, there's a lot to like in here. You got Alistair Vallejo, who's a guy that people think remind them a lot of Mason Graham. He's got that sort of build, that sort of look. There's a lot of diamonds in here, man. And then, you're wondering, Michigan loses a couple guys flip at the last minute. How's Michigan going to respond? Well, they go out and sign. How about Brady Marchese, the 4-star wide receiver? I'm big on this.
You got his jersey already, don't you?
I'm in the process of ordering it, but there's just certain guys that this might be the kiss of death, but like he's my new
don't do it. Don't do it.
Should I not do it?
No.
I feel like this is going to be a guy. I feel like this is going to be a guy.
No,
I am 0 for 5. I was wrong about Andrew. I'm wrong about Frederick Moore. Yeah. I think I'm going to be right about Brady Marchese though. But again, there's a lot to like about this signing class, Jared. I guess as you look through it and you're looking at these 27 new additions to the roster, thinking about the job that Sherrone Moore has done on the recruiting trail, I mean, what goes through your mind, man? There are a lot of really interesting prospects here.
There are, and I'm telling you, to me, I like the size of these guys, right? Like you said, Carter Meadows, 6'6", 240 already as an edge. Like that's serviceable. You could play as a freshman. You mentioned Alistair, he's 6'3", 310. Another big one that I like a lot out of Hawaii, the Malachi Lee. I thought we were going to lose him for a little bit. And he even talked about in his commitment how hard teams are coming at him. But 6'6", 320. The tight end Matt Ludwig out of Montana here, dude. He's a dog. I mean, 6'4", what is this? 353.
This is CJ Frazier. He's just so there's a long running ever since we've been doing this show here. There is a long running joke that I was so big on Andrell Anthony for a while that I mean, look, this is a winged helmet SI Andrew Anthony custom jersey signed on the back here. I've got one of JJ McCarthy and Donovan Edwards too, but the number one jersey behind, I thought Andrew Anthony was going to be the guy. I thought he was going to be the dude. Oh. I mean, again, you give him the number one jersey. Does the number one jersey mean anything in Ann Arbor anymore? Because I think I get tripped up by that a lot. But yeah, I've been wrong on the wide receiver, the guys that I thought were going to break out. And so I hope Brady Marchese is that guy, but he's also a guy that I think can do a little bit of damage on special teams. And Jared, you and I have talked about this a while for like Michigan and special teams. Obviously, JB Brown was just let go. I think we all know that. That coming, Michigan special teams was an absolute disaster. And it just seemed hard to see any scenario where JB Brown was going to be able to keep his job after that showing. Really no phase of special teams was any good. But when you look at a Brady Marchese, like maybe he's that type of guy. We've talked about this where special teams, punt returns, kick returns, Michigan they didn't really have any difference makers back there. You threw Andrew Marsh back there. You had Samaj Morgan back there, but you weren't really making plays that could flip the field in special teams. And he seems like he could be one of those guys. And so again, when you look at this signing class top to bottom, 27 signatures over the last 2 days, the guys that Michigan was able to retain, some of the flips that one of the flips they were able to get, they're still targeting another one that's big out there, another 5-star.
Yep.
I don't know, he might participate in Michigan basketball as well. We'll have to see how that plays out. But Dusty May offered Calvin Russell when he was at FAU. Yep. He's still a big-time target. There's questions. Is he going to stick with Syracuse? Miami in the mix, and obviously the Michigan Wolverines are in the mix, and so not quite done yet with this class. But I love what I'm seeing. And Jared, let's do this, because I think this is a good way to start it off while we're waiting for some questions to come in here. I see a lot of comments coming in. I haven't seen any questions yet. I might have missed them. But let's do this, because since the loss to Ohio State, a big discussion has taken place, as it often does, about the head coach at the University of Michigan. It used to be Jim Harbaugh. Now it's Sherrone Moore. And it seems like, there's always going to be a faction of the fans that are going to be unrealistic and they're going to want somebody's head the second that things go wrong. But when you listen to the commentary surrounding Sherrone Moore throughout the week, it seems pretty standard that everybody's in the same boat, that year 3 is a very big year for Sherrone Moore. And you had asked me prior to clicking the live button here that based on what he's done on the recruiting trail, last year he pulled in a top 10 class. This year they're sitting just outside the top 10. But again, those are rankings. Those are stars. When you look at the dudes, when you look at Savion Hyder, when you look at Carter Meadows, when you look at some of these guys, this is an elite class of recruits that he's bringing in. Jared, what was the question that you asked me?
So, I got to say one thing first, back to the special teams thing, because you said Brady. I'm telling you, if I'm interviewing for the Michigan special teams position, and especially if Justice Haynes is coming back, I'm asking the question, hey, can we put Hyder back there? Because the kid's going to struggle to see the field a little bit if he's got Marshall and Haynes ahead of him, but he's a talent. You shared it on Facebook, some of the highlights. The kid's amazing. Why not throw him back there as a freshman and let him get some reps? So I would do that personally. If he's not RB2, if he's RB2, because Haynes leaves, obviously we don't want to risk anything. But if he's RB3, you can't leave a kid like that on the bench. But the question I said is has Sherrone Moore's recruiting abilities extended cooled the seat, if you will, because you said he's on the hot seat going in next year. Has it cooled it down to make it a little lukewarm?
It's an interesting question, because I said this to you before we went live, but I do think that there are so many elements of this job that Sherrone Moore does well, just considering the fact that he is a first-time head coach. It is a massive program like the University of Michigan. Jared, I mentioned this to you, that he didn't have his opportunity to cut his teeth at another program. And I use Brian Hartline as a perfect example. Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. You look at this guy there, people were talking about, is he going to go to Penn State? Some of these other D1 openings that were out there. And it seemed like he would have been qualified, that there would have been some interest there, but he ends up going to what? USF is where he's off to?
Florida. Yep.
Yeah. So he's off to USF. And that's a job where you can have a minute to cut your teeth, right? The expectation isn't you got to make the college football playoff every single year at USF. And so as a new first-time head coach, you have the opportunity to sort of make some mistakes and you're not in the pressure cooker. But when you go to Ohio State, and when you go to Alabama and Georgia and Michigan and Penn State, it is a pressure cooker for any head coach. And we saw that with Jim Harbaugh. He was not immune to people calling for his job. And that's just the expectation that comes along with it. So when you ask me, is his recruiting success going to cool the seat down a little bit? Honestly, man, I think it's the opposite. I think it is the exact opposite. I think that Sherrone Moore recruiting at a high level at the University of Michigan, coming off of 2 back-to-back seasons where you don't make the playoff, just goes to show how strong this brand is. It goes to prove that all of the resources are here in terms of NIL. You can really go out and get anybody you want at the University of Michigan. This is one of those few jobs across the country where if you're a head coach here, you're not really starving for anything. You've got all the resources you could ever want. And so I think it just reinforces the idea that the expectation is you got to deliver. And so while I pat him on the back and it's kudos and let's give him an applause for a hell of a job that he's doing on the recruiting trail, to me, Jared, this just reinforces the fact that this is a place where you're expected to win. You're bringing in elite level recruits. There's really nothing that you could want from a resource standpoint that you're not getting. If you're not making the college football playoff, it's a problem.
Well, and that's my thing, right? He's bringing in the guys. So last year was his first real full recruiting year. That was his class, top to bottom. He built it. He had the full cycle to build it and came in at number 6, right? 2 5-stars. Michigan hadn't had 2 5-stars since JJ and Donovan were 5-stars. Sometimes on some things they weren't, some of they were, right? But 2 bona fide 5-stars last year, 2 marquee 5-stars this year. So these are his first 2 classes. So how can you take a guy whose first class was Bryce Underwood and next year you say, hey, I know it's your 3rd year technically, but we're going to let you go because you didn't make the playoff. He hasn't even had his team. There's still going to be Jim Harbaugh players on that team next year. There was a bunch of Jim Harbaugh players on the team this year. I think in college football, and Tom Izzo even said it, when did it become that we're giving guys 2 to 3 years to turn around entire programs regardless of the sport? That's not possible. Like, he's had some success, but has he turned that program around yet? We don't know. He's had 2 years. He hasn't won anything, but he's had 2 good years. That's not turning the program around. I just think that you got it. To me, he's always got to get that 3rd year from his first recruiting class. Bryce Underwood's junior year, that to me, that's maker. Like, to me, it's not making the playoff. It's being a contender at that point. They have to be a contending team at that point. Because it's the same thing.
You're talking about 2026?
So not next year, the year after. Bryce's junior year.
So listen, this is something you said to me in a text message, and I was shocked when I heard this. And I'm curious, if you're out there watching, we've got a decent amount of people in here watching live right now. Jared is of the mindset that, and it's not to say that you don't want them in the college football playoff hunt in 2026, but you don't think 2026 is the year. You're really looking at 2027 as the year where they have to be legit competitors.
Yeah. I'm looking at this on the same trajectory as that JJ McCarthy class, right? Except for they went to the college football playoff, but JJ wasn't playing. 2nd year, which will be next year for Bryce, they made the college football playoff. I think Michigan has the pieces, depending what they do in the portal. If Haynes comes back, it's early. But you and I talked on paper, they should be able to get into a college football playoff. A couple losses. So a lot of the teams that they're playing that are big next year have some big name players losing to, mainly quarterbacks. Indiana, Oklahoma. Penn State's in shambles. Iowa's Iowa, right? So you still got Ohio State, some good teams, but they should. If they make the college football playoff, that'd be great. But I think that 3rd year, if they're not a top 3 contender to win it all, then there's a problem. That's it for me, because that's the JJ, that class, right? When Jim Harbaugh finally got a really good class, it was that JJ Donovan class, and he followed it up with the Will Johnson class, right? And so those 2 classes, their junior and sophomore year, they won the Natty. And I think that's the same trajectory we're on here. And that's what I would hate to see next year, some freaking donor, like you talked about last pod, that says, I want results now. Well, that's not how it works in college football, my friend. You fire him now, you're going to lose all those kids because the portal's wide open. And then you're looking at Penn State. Look at them. Ask Penn State fans how they're doing. I bet you they'd rather have Franklin back right now.
Yeah. The difference with James Franklin was there was a long track record with James Franklin. Like, you might not like what the track record was, but at least there was data you could refer to there was something, Penn State finishing 4th or 3rd in the conference was pretty much a given. So like there was a track record there for Sherrone Moore. There's really nothing beyond the University of Michigan. So there's a little bit of mystery that's there. And, there's some people out here that are responding to sort of your take here. Nate Town from the Facebook page, he's saying, this is the portal era. The time to rebuild a program has been sped up by that big time. And Jared, you and I have talked about this a lot, and that's kind of where I'm at. And yeah, traditionally, I just want to make that clear. Traditionally, I agree with you. Traditionally, I think it's insane that you would let a guy go after 3 seasons especially when you think about all of the rebuilding that had to take place and everything that he had to replace in that first year. But then you look down the road at East Lansing, and again, it's apples and oranges, but Jonathan Smith got, 2 seasons in East Lansing, and really it was a season and a half, because I think that decision had been made halfway through the 2025 season that he wasn't going to be the guy.
He didn't show any improvement, Chris, on any level.
That's true.
Sherrone has shown that recruiting improvement. He's revamped the NIL. He brought in a GM. There was no GM when Jim Harbaugh was there. Now there's a legit GM in Sean McGee. So Sherrone Moore has modernized this program. He stole the running back coach from Ohio State, and he's the best running back coach in the country. Like, he's made some incredible improvements, and I think we're just looking at, well, Bryce Underwood's only throwing 180 yards a game. Like, that's one thing. He's got a whole shit ton of other things that he's doing that creates a program, right? Like, when Saban went to Alabama, like what's the first thing he had to fix? Recruiting. Alabama was back then going 8, 9 wins, 10 here and there. You know what I mean? They weren't the powerhouse. He realized consistent recruiting, good coaches. Which Sherrone, he's got to work on that a little bit, but
I mean, he's a 2nd-year head coach. Like that's
and he nailed it with Alford.
Right.
And got rid of JB. That's good.
There's some, back and forth. People are kind of iffy on Wink Martindale right now. I think that after last year with Ohio State, everybody loved Wink Martindale and couldn't wait to have him back. And then this year after Ohio State, everybody wants to put him on a rock. And it was the same thing last year for like the first half of the season when Michigan was struggling with what? They were struggling on 3rd down, couldn't get off the field, and it looked like the defense was going to struggle all year. And then as the season went on, things just started to fall into place. Yeah. And so I'm not really on that. And I 100% get what you're saying. And like I said, I think I'm more so in your boat under normal circumstances. But to Nate's point, this era of college football is just a little bit different. And, I'll go to what CJ said as well. He says you don't get that type of time in the NIL world we're in now with free agency every year. Immediate results are expected. And Jared, that's what I go back to is that, he should be given time in an ideal world to sort of let this thing play out. And, you give him 3 or 4 years or whatever it is to really let this all come to fruition. But the reality is in today's day and age of college football, it is free agency. It's unlimited free agency. You can dip into the portal and you can make things happen and you can make massive transformations in one off season. And when you look at Michigan, a program that has an abundance of resources, an abundance of financial backing to be able to go out and essentially get whoever you want around the country, I think when you have those types of resources, if you're Sherrone Moore, the timeline gets sped up quite a bit because you're thinking, if we have an experienced head coach in that seat, if we got a guy who's got a proven track record, that type of person is probably able to make the most of it. And the thing working against Sherrone right now is that there is that lack of track record. You just can't point to another stop he's been at like you could with Harbaugh. Harbaugh got a long leash. I get it. It was prior to the NIL and the portal era and all that stuff. But Harbaugh got a long leash because you could point to all of his different stops. You could look at Stanford. You could look at San Francisco. You could look at what he did with, who the hell was it? It was like San Diego. What was that? Was it San Diego? San Diego State? San Diego Tech? I don't know what the hell it was where he started. But there was a track record with him that you could look to and give yourself some comfort that if you just gave him enough time, things would turn around. And unfortunately, Sherrone doesn't have that.
I also think that everybody is just looking at the success stories of this NIL transfer portal, right? Your guy, Kurt Signetti, who you wear his shirt when people aren't around and you're not on podcasts. I wanted to put that out there. But that dude's done well at Indiana. There's also Deion Sanders, who has tanked at Colorado using the transfer portal heavily, right? And he's brought in 5-star guys. He brought in 5-star transfer quarterbacks. He brought in 5-star players. Travis Hunter did well there, won a Heisman. The team didn't do well. You know what I mean? The team was still trash. So you can't just say it's expected because you got to show me that there's consistent results of people bring in transfers. And Indiana, cool, they won some games. What have they won? They haven't won anything. They've won some games.
Right.
I mean, they're going into a college football playoff this year. Cool. They might be able to do something. They weren't in it last year, right? Got bounced. Didn't do anything. So are we at the point now that we just want you to make the college football playoff, and that's where we're success? That's where we're happy?
That's what I mean. Even more so than the conference. Like, Jared, how much value do you put into the Big Ten championship? How much value do you have in that?
Because of the two teams that are in there, I'm going to watch it and I'm going to care.
But I mean, in terms of winning it, like value wise, like how much value do you place on that?
I mean, for these guys, it's going to be for the one seed. So it depends on the teams, right? 6, 7. It depends on the teams. That was for you, brother. That was for you. No, I think it depends on the teams. Like if Michigan was in it this year, somehow I'd snuck in with 2 losses. I'd be nervous as hell for them to lose it. Yeah. Then I would say, don't even play. Don't even go. Because you get that 3rd loss. Now the conference, they look at you and they're like, well, that's a 3-loss team. We can't put them in. So it depends on the situation to me. This year, it's important. I mean, I think they're playing for the 1 seed. You know what I mean? Whoever wins that game is the 1 seed, which Oregon showed means absolutely nothing when they got shellacked last year by Ohio, 41-21. But I don't know. I just think we can't just say because of the transfer portal, because of NIL, you should be able to rebuild your team quick. Okay, because some teams have done it. Some teams haven't. Now, Ohio State, Will Howard was their quarterback. He was a transfer guy. That was good. But was Will Howard the reason they won last year? I don't think any of us truly believe that. I mean, he had some good games. He did well, but I don't think he was like, he didn't stick out to me. I watched their run, right? I watched college football. Julian Sand this year as a transfer guy.
Well, it's
a little
also
bit different. Awesome.
And it's easy to look like a really great quarterback when you've got Jeremiah Smith right out there. You got an offensive line. You got Carnell Tate. Like it's those guys can make. Correct. I don't want to say any quarterback, but dude, throw Cade McNamara into that offense, and he's probably going to look like an all Big Ten quarterback. So
I just saw a thing. Somebody was talking about JJ and said, he's struggling in the NFL because, believe it or not, he had elite people around him at Michigan, and they were showing some of the plays that he unfortunately missed. While he was at Michigan, that a good quarterback should have saw, and maybe that's why he's struggling. He had that run game. He had that offensive line was incredible, right? He had all the time in the world, and same with Sand. We hit him. We didn't even sack him, did we? We hit him like 3 times total.
I think there was only 1 hit on Sand. There was only one that I saw from the field.
Pretty easy to quarterback when you never. I'm running blind here. I can't see the comments, so you can't just read them to yourself.
I got some notification that the stream on Facebook is struggling for whatever reason, and so the notification just popped up. So I guess if you're here from the YouTube page, try to hang out. We'll hope that the Facebook stream, gets back up and running. I don't know. This is the 2nd time this has happened since we've done this. Maybe we're just overloading the system here with all the people that are popping in. But Jared, let's do this, man, because we do have a lot of questions that are in here, people that have thrown things up. So what the hell was that?
I'm trying to check the Facebook for you.
Oh, I got you.
It was we'll do it live. It was.
I got you. All right, here, let's go to Darren May's question, because this was something that I had talked about. I put it up on the social media pages. I tried to put together the 3 most common things that I feel like I'm hearing from Michigan fans, and this was one of them. Darren May from the Facebook page says we need a quarterbacks coach ASAP. That's step 1. Jared, right now you've got Chip Lindsey serving as the offensive coordinator, but he is also the quarterbacks coach for the University of Michigan. Do you put any stock into that? How much do you think in terms of it would be beneficial for Bryce Underwood to bring in another quarterback coach, not only somebody that's dedicated to just working with the quarterbacks in terms of their development, but also somebody who's down on the sideline? Chip Lindsey's up in the booth calling the plays, so you don't have your QB coach down on the sideline. How much value would you put into that? How much development do you think is still there left on the bone?
Man, 100%. I think it needs to happen. And the reason I'll say that, you and I talk about, we like football, we watch football. I'm not really a schematic X and O, break it down. John Gruden would destroy me. Those types of things. But I watched the game. I know a little bit about it, and I watched Hard Knocks with the Bills, and they have a quarterback guru is kind of like what they called him, and he worked with Josh Allen, and I mean, incredible detail. Like, he would get set to throw and they'd stop him, and they'd have an iPad watching. They'd be like, all right, your arm needs to go up like 1/4 of an inch. This hand needs to go here. This needs to go here. And I was watching, I was like, God dang, that's crazy. And then they put it all together and they said, here's him as a rookie We've done this for, the 7 years he's been in the league. Here's him now. And they showed his throwing style. It was incredible, the transformation. They got one guy who's locked in on his mechanics, locked in on his reads, locked in on and just like you said, he gets off the field, goes right to that guy. What did you see? Well, your eyes weren't here. You did this, you did that. And then he goes to the offensive coordinator. So I'm 100%. It needs to happen. 100%. With a talent like that, you got to put the resources to it.
Yeah.
And it can't just be a Michigan guy. It can't just be a name guy. It's got to be a proven guy.
It's got to be Tom Brady, right?
I mean, he did okay. He did all right. Knows a little bit about the position.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I know all the inner workings and what Chip Lindsey is doing with Bryce Underwood behind the scenes and all of that stuff. And even if they have other guys on the roster who are working with the quarterbacks, I'm assuming that that's the case as well. But what I will say is that I'm sure it would be nice to have I don't know, man, look around the country. There are elite quarterback coaches out there aplenty that if you're the University of Michigan and you say, hey, we want to bring in a dedicated guy that can help work on mechanics, help work on fundamentals, just help the development of our quarterbacks and have that guy on the sideline on Saturday so that when Bryce comes over, it's not a phone call up to Chip Lindsey or anything like that, but you're having real conversations on the sideline. I just think that would be tremendous for his development. And that seems to be one of the top concerns you hear from fans is that they want to see an elite quarterback coach come in. And I guess here's what I'll say. I said I don't know what the behind the scenes stuff looks like in terms of what Chip Lindsey is doing. But the one thing I go back to that raises my eyebrow a little bit is Jaden Davis and his throwing motion. He has been in the program now for a while. He came into the program as a, 4-star, high 4-star, borderline 5-star at one point. I know that the rating sort of shifted a little bit, but he was a highly rated quarterback recruit coming out of high school. He came in with some obvious mechanic things that needed to be worked through. And after 2 years into the program, the throwing motion looks pretty much the same when you watch him out there. I mean, it's a long wind up. He drops the ball real low. And last year when Michigan was struggling and working through Davis Warren and Alex Orji and Jack Tuttle and nobody could really do anything, Jaden Davis really wasn't a viable option for this team. And so that's the thing that gives me a little bit of concern is you would think you would see some improvement in Jaden Davis in terms of his mechanics and his readiness to come in and be a contributor if needed on Saturdays. And so I'm 100% in the same boat as the fans. If Sherrone Moore is able to, I say, you put out the feelers, you utilize your resources, and you look for a top flight quarterback coach who wants to come, make a name for himself at the University of Michigan working with Bryce Underwood. I would imagine that's a pretty damn easy sell if you're Sherrone Moore. And there's no question that it can't hurt, right? There's no downside to bringing in another guy who's really good at working with quarterbacks.
No, and if I'm that quarterback guru and they offer me that position, in my mind, I know if I get Bryce to be a top 5 NFL pick, I'm probably going to go with Bryce, right? Like the kid's not going to say, oh, you got me here, shake your hand and walk away. He's going to say, you got me here. Now you're going to take me through the NFL too. And there's long history of strength and conditioning coaches. Tim Grove, Michael Jordan's strength and conditioning coach, stayed with him his whole career, right? You get with one of these type of athletes and it can make your career. And it's just like, I mean, you buy a sports car and you or I drive it, right? We're running right into the wall.
Yeah.
You got a Ferrari talent in Bryce Underwood. You got to get somebody who knows how to get him where he needs to be. And I agree with fans 100% on this. I think it's an absolute no-brainer. I just hope that Michigan doesn't do what sometimes Michigan does. And, we need a Michigan man. Okay, Tom Brady, that's fine. We'll let that happen. Brian Greasy, I don't think would be a horrible hire. I don't think who I think would be a great hire.
You said you don't want Michigan to do what Michigan always does. And now you're listing Michigan guys.
Two guys that will never take the job. I tell you who I think would be a great person for it would be Byron Leftwich.
Byron Leftwich. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was great. And he, I mean, even Tom Brady, when he went to Tampa, said like he knows his shit. Like he's a good, he wasn't exactly a mobile guy, but he's a great quarterback. And I mean, if you can get Tom Brady to listen to you at the last of his career where he was already, the man, that tells me you know what you're talking about, right? So I think that would be a good one. And I don't know what he's doing now, but he's not making that much money. He's not head coach anywhere. You know what I mean? So
sure.
If somebody can look up what Byron Leftwich is doing, we'll give him a call after this.
Here's what I'll say. And we talk about the people who follow this page, the fans that are here, how this is just not just a good looking group, but a real smart group. And I said that I put out this list, right? Bring in a dedicated quarterback coach for Bryce Underwood. You want to know who signs off on what the fans say that they want, what the Michigan fans say they want? How about Jake Butt? Jake Butt retweeting this list of things that we put out today. So Jake Butt says, you guys talk about, hey, you want Chip Lindsey to have full control of the offense in 2026? Well, guess what? Jake Butt agrees with you. You want Sherrone Moore to bring in a dedicated quarterbacks coach for Bryce Underwood? Guess what? Jake Butt agrees with you. And you want Michigan to go into the transfer portal and bring in some legitimate, viable weapons for Bryce Underwood at wide receiver. Guess what? Jake Butt agrees with you. He says on Twitter, he retweets the tweet and he says, this must be the priorities this offseason, along with significantly upgrading special teams and replenishing the defensive line, in particular with future day half potential level players. So, look, I think that overall, I don't think that what fans are asking for is completely unreasonable from this team. I think that you sit back and you sort of watch the way that things play out, and you can see that you're not that far away from being a legitimate championship contender, but there are things that absolutely must be done. Quarterback coach seems to be one of those things. Let's go into another one of those things, Jared. Let me throw up what number 2 was. Just so we're
just dialing it in, right? He's just dialing it in. Like I said, he's doing some of the right things. You can't say, you can't hang it all on because Bryce is throwing some weird passes here and there.
Yeah, let's talk about what number 1 was. And this has been a topic of conversation, and I think Sherrone Moore alluded to it after the Ohio State game that there was a bit of a change in the game plan. The number one thing fans said that they wanted to see was they want to see offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey have full control of the offense in 2026. And I think that there's some question. They know that Chip Lindsey is calling the plays, but in terms of developing the game plan and then in game when there's changes being made, how much does Sherrone Moore have his fingerprints on it? There's 2 games that people point to in the 2025 season and say, boy, those looked very, very different. And one was the Northwestern game where it looked like Bryce Underwood was firing all over the field. I get it. He made some mistakes, but I've said this before, like you can live with Bryce Underwood making mistakes if it's in an effort to push the ball down the field. That offense looked vastly different than what we saw on Saturday against Ohio State, right? It looked like Michigan's offense went into a shell. Bryce Underwood had 5 passing attempts in the first half against the Buckeyes. I don't see any world where that's going to be acceptable. And Michigan struggled on third down. And so when you look at all of these things, it just seemed like something changed in that Ohio State game. And the belief is, based on the reporting, that Northwestern was more in line with what Chip Lindsey wants to see from this offense, and Ohio State was more in line with what Sherrone Moore wants to see from this offense. And there was also some reporting that as players were walking off after the game, walking off the field, that one player who I can only assume was a starter said something to the effect of, it's real nice that we worked on a game plan all week to never use it in the game, right? So when those things are being said by your players, and it's doubtful that this guy was the only one feeling it, it sure seems like Michigan, had a direction of what they wanted to do against Ohio State, and then they veered away from it early when it seemed like the running game was going to work. So, Jared, I guess I'll just ask you, Chip Lindsey took a lot of heat this year because the offense didn't look as prolific and as explosive as people wanted. How much do you put into this that maybe Sherrone Moore needs to just take a bigger step back from the offense and just let Chip Lindsey run this thing?
No, I once again, we have the smartest fans on the winged helmet, and I agree 100%. And I'll go back to something. So I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but to me, it ties into this scripted plays. What do you think about scripting the first 10 plays of the game? What was your thoughts ever on that?
I'm sorry. Hold on. I got to remove this guy from the. Let's just get one of these dipshits out here. Hey, we got a good one. Totally fine with Ohio State fans coming in here, but just bring something of substance, please. Don't
boot him. So scripted plays, like the first 10 plays of the game are scripted. You've heard of that, right? Nick Saban, huge proponent.
Yeah. Yep.
What have your thoughts been on that?
On what they actually did?
No. What do you think? Like, do you think that's a good idea? Going into a game with the first 10 plays, we're scripted regardless. We're going to do these 10 plays, and that's how we're going to do it.
I mean, I subscribe to it, I think, but that's based on tendencies that you know from watching game film. And so I think, yeah, you have a game plan come in.
Yep.
You want to be the team that dictates what happens on the field, right? You don't want to play reactive. You want to be the one dictating the terms. So I'm on board with it. I'm not saying it's the only way to live, but sure, scripted plays coming out of the gate, I'm in favor of it.
So here's what when Nick Saban kind of explained it, because I never fully understood it. I thought, you're scripted, it's 3rd and 1, and your script is a deep out. Like, is that what you're really going to run on 3rd and 1? But what he said was exactly what you said. He said you build it based on the tendencies of the defense,
right?
And it stops you from scrapping your game plan early because something works. 36-yard Marshall run. When that happened, Sherrone Moore was like, we got him. We're going to run all day. And everything went out the freaking window. And I think we've talked in the past too, it's his job on the line, right? So he might get a little bit nervous and start pulling the reins back on some things like, oh, this is my job. I got to, but he's got to let it go. Chip Lindsey did great with Drake May. Drake May's killing it in the NFL right now. I mean, he's an MVP candidate. And he came up under Chip Lindsey. Like, he exploded under Chip Lindsey. I think the guy has shown that he can get an aerial attack going, and you got to let him do it. Either that or just fire him and take it all on yourself, and you own everything. Because that's my other part. I feel bad for Chip Lindsey getting flack, and we don't know if he's even – I mean, in the end, Sherrone Moore is the head coach, and he can say, no, I'm going to do this. And Chip Lindsey's not going to come out and say, what the player said. Hey, that's not the game plan I had. But if you're not going to let him do it, then don't let him do it and take it all on yourself. And you're kind of scapegoating the guy. To me, it feels like you're doing him bad. You're doing him dirty. He's built the game plan all week, and you're scrapping it.
Yeah, and look at the heat that Kurt Campbell took last year, and then he ended up losing his job. Talk about a guy who's
maybe it wasn't even his fault.
Position, you never know. But there were a lot of people throughout the year that looked at this offense and said, we got a better quarterback, but things just kind of look very similar to what we saw last year with maybe some better, more athletic pieces in place. And I've heard this narrative as well, too, that it looks like you took a Bryce Underwood and you plugged him into Michigan's offense, and you tried to get him to work within what Michigan does traditionally well. Yeah. Whereas the other school of thought is, and I know you're not a big fan of me talking about the investment that gets made into the quarterback, but you do make a sizable investment into the quarterback. Why not build your offense around what he does well? Don't ask him to do anything that's really out of his wheelhouse. Don't stretch him too thin. You want him to develop and you want him to grow, but you also want him to be successful on the field. And so a lot of times it just felt like Bryce Underwood was trying to work his way into Michigan's offense versus Michigan's offense really playing to what Bryce Underwood's strengths were. And I think a lot of that you could see in the running ability. We know he's not a 4.3 burner, right? He's not a complete speedster, but that is an element of his game that when you incorporate it into this offense can make this offense incredibly dynamic. And we just didn't get to see much of it this year. So I don't know, was he uncomfortable doing it? And Sherrone Moore said earlier in the year that, hey, if you're going to run your starting quarterback, you better make sure you have 2 quarterbacks. So was it a fear on the coaching staff's part? I don't know what it is, but when you have a true dual threat quarterback like Bryce Underwood and you take that running element out of the offense, I just think that adds more pressure on you, and you're taking one of your biggest weapons and you're saying, nah, we're not going to use it. For what? What's the reason?
I'm 100% with you, because I remember the week that he said that, he made that comment. I was watching, and we've talked about it before, I was watching the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens, and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson were running all over the field because their quarterbacks or their coaches know what? This is a talent. This is a part of their game that can change the game. And I was in a text with my buddies, and I said, hey, Sherrone Moore made this comment. I said, can you name the backup quarterback for Baltimore or Buffalo? No, neither can I. And the coach doesn't care. He's not going to tell them, well, don't run for that first down because there's nobody behind you. We got to win the game. We're going to do whatever we can to win the game. It's football. Bryce could anything could happen to him on a drop back. It doesn't. We're playing football here. You know what I mean? You can't protect the guy.
When did Rod Moore get hurt? It wasn't on fall Saturdays. It was in spring practice. And anytime you step on the field, anytime you run, anytime you work your body, something can happen. And I get it. 100%. You don't want to put your quarterback in harm's way against Central.
Teach him how to slide.
But Bryce Underwood was running against Central Michigan. So that's what I'm saying. We saw it against Nebraska, right? Where Underwood took off, and I think it was a 45-yard touchdown run or something like that. He burst into the field and he was gone. So
I agree.
There is so much potential locked up in this offense. And I think that people are looking at the way it played out. The potential and what's possible doesn't match up with the results that we saw. And so there's a belief that the Jim Harbaugh blueprint, the smash mouth football, even Sherrone Moore, like his motto is smash, smash, smash. We get all that, but you've brought in some weapons now. You got some legitimate guys in this offense. I get it. They were young and you had some issues with the offensive line, and there's all kinds of excuses we can make. But at the end of the day, there is potential in this offense to be incredibly explosive in 2026. And I think that if you don't see that, it's going to be an issue for Sherrone Moore. It's going to be an issue for Chip Lindsey, because the talent is simply too good to see a repeat of what we saw in 2025.
I also think what you said, this year to me was not the year to build the offense around Bryce. It wasn't. He's an 18-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid at the time, 18-year-old kid, but move that way. I'm with you on the moving. Like next year, I think it needs to be geared more towards Bryce. But now, so you look at next year. What if you walk into next year with Justice Haynes, Jordan Marshall, and Savion Hyder in that running back room? What's the strength of your offense? It's the freaking running game again.
Well,
sure.
Sure.
It's got to be a little more balanced. But I truly believe in that third year that this team has got to be Bryce's third year. It's got to be his team. He's got to be able to make audibles. It's got to be his team. If he's that dude, if he's the dude, and I'm going to use you now that we paid $12 million to. It's his team. He's got to go win something that third year.
Yeah. And even if you've got a running back room that deep, like you saw what happened this year, like Max Bredesen goes down, Jordan Marshall goes down, Justice Haynes goes down. So even though you're deep, you can still burn through a lot of these guys. And how nice would it be in like the final third of the season, final quarter of the season to go into it? Think about this, man. Like Michigan has some tough games next year. They got to go on the road and play Ohio State. They got to go on the road and play Oregon. You got to play Oklahoma at home. You got to play Penn State. You got to play Iowa. You got to play Indiana. It's a loaded schedule next year. How nice would it be to have a fully healthy Justice Haynes, Jordan Marshall, and Savion Hyder in like the final quarter of the season? It would be incredible. But also for the reasons that I talked about, you get into that Ohio State game, you have a good run with Jordan Marshall, you think that's the way it's going to go, and then, all of a sudden, nope, we're playing an elite defense. They clamp down, and there's no other gear for this offense to go to, and that's how you end up, what were they, like 2 of 9 on third down, 2 of 14 on third? Whatever it was shitty. I know that. We talked about the number on the last show. It wasn't good. So when you don't have that other gear, when you don't have that other dimension as an offense, even if your running game is elite, you've got to be balanced, and for the love of God, man, Bryce Underwood, Andrew Marsh, you had a couple more portal receivers around him. You get your tight end game working. This could be a top 20 offense next year, which is incredible considering what we saw this year.
And another thing we should point out too, a lot of fans I've noticed have been taking hits at the coaching staff. Well, you're beating your running backs up. No, they're really not. If you combine Haynes and Marshall's rushing attempts, they're not even together. They wouldn't even be the top rushing running back in the country or in the Big Ten. It's like 270 combined, right? Marshall only rushed 150 times this year. But they were saying, well, the injuries are because they're running him too much. No, they're not. These guys aren't actually running that much. I think Haynes didn't even get hurt in a game. He got hurt in a practice. Again, you said injuries are going to happen.
I think the first Michigan State.
He tweaked something, and then I think it aggravated in practice. But
was it Michigan State or was it USC? I can't even remember.
I don't remember. No, it was USC. It was USC.
Yeah, he only played half the USC game, right?
Yep. He went out. But that's another thing. I don't know if what was number 3 on the list. We got to go to where are we going to 3?
Well, yeah, we'll go to number 3 real quick, and then I want to run this commercial from. How about this? Let's do this. Let me run the commercial from VFW National Home. I'm going to run the commercial. I'll come back. We'll go over number 3, the top 3 things that Michigan fans have said they want to see from this offense in 2026. We'll go over number 3. That's relating to the wide receiver situation. We touched on it a little bit. We'll dive into it, I guess, a little bit more when we come back. And then I will start going through, and we'll do some real quick hitters on the questions that have come in, because I've seen a lot of good a lot of good ones come in.
God, you just can't help yourself.
and this is the other thing I want to say before we go to the commercial. I guess username from the YouTube page, Kill Yourself. Is that how you say that? Yeah, you got to modify that a little bit. But he says, or he or she says, Chris, you need to holler at Facebook customer service or something concerning the Facebook streams, or immediately give the YouTube link to the viewers in case it goes down. That is a phenomenal idea. And in fact, for as much as I want you guys to watch on the Facebook stream, if you guys could go over to the YouTube page and subscribe to the Winged Helmet Media YouTube channel, the more subscribers we get over there, at some point soon here in the near future, we're going to be able to monetize it. I just really haven't put too much effort into the YouTube stuff, and I really need to do that. So I will do my job to get that all sorted out. But for certain, if you want to go over to YouTube and watch us over there and subscribe to the channel, I feel like some sort of like one of those like YouTube guys. I'm like, oh, click subscribe.
Yeah, you're
doing that. Bag. But I would love if you could go over there and do that. Let's run this commercial from VFW National Home. We'll come back and talk about the Michigan wide receiver situation in 2026.
Story takes us to Eaton Rapids, Michigan.
Eaton Rapids is the site of the Veterans of Foreign Wars home. The home has been in existence since 1925 and is a fully equipped community.
When I was 10 years old, we had some unfortunate things happen in my family, and we ended up being homeless. My mother's friend told her about a place called the VFW National Home. It was the first time that I had real stability in my childhood.
Very few people outside of the state of Michigan understand that this is a place where veterans from all over the United States can go and get help that they need.
The military does a great job of creating soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen. What they don't do is they don't create good veterans. That's the VFW National Home's job. That's what we do.
Do that. Let's run this.
All right. Thank you once again to VFW National Home, kind enough to be our sponsor here. And I've said it before, but if you are a veteran and you're looking for resources out there, it's just a phenomenal group to get in touch with. They do everything from free housing to childcare. They help you get your finances in order. They are a tremendous resource for veterans out there. So if you are a veteran, definitely look into VFW National Home. If you got to get yourself right, it's a big deal, man. These people go out and they devote their lives to making sure that they can keep us safe and take care of this country. And so, damn it, Jared, it's our duty to make sure that we return the favor to these guys when they get back. And thank you for your service as well.
I'll tell you, in the last couple months, we had a guy come in that his retirement was messed up, and in 2 years they fudged a number, so they cost him 2 years of his retirement. And so he came to me, my boss and I went and looked through it. And I went some of my resources, $39,000 in back pay.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible. So that's what we're here for at the National Home. Any veterans that are on the stream or on the page, or if you know anybody, send them my way. If they have any issues with VA, anything, we can help them with anything. And that's what we're trying to do. So we appreciate you, Chris, pushing it out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a phenomenal organization, and again, grateful for their support here to Winged Helmet Media. Let's do this. Let's talk about the third thing that Michigan fans have said that they absolutely want to see from this offense in 2026. Jared, I think this is a non-negotiable. And I know that people want to bring up Donovan McCulley as like an example, and this is no shade to Donovan McCulley, but to me, the third thing that people want to see is they want to see the Michigan Wolverines hit the transfer portal and pull out like legit elite wide receiver talent. And I've said this on a show before, and I don't say it to sound cruel, but like, I don't want any guys from UMass. I don't want any guys from UTEP. I don't want any guys from these lower level programs. I want to go in and get a guy from, and I'm just throwing it out there, get a guy from LSU, get a guy from Bama, look how it worked out with Justice Haynes, right? When you go out and you're able to land some of these pretty elite prospects in the portal. When it comes to wide receiver, Jared, there has been so much of an investment into Bryce Underwood and making sure that you have the guy at quarterback. I think seeing Andrew Marsh, an up-and-comer, a true freshman who really started to come on toward the end of the season. We're not going to talk about that Ohio State game because the fact that he didn't even get targeted last Saturday just drives me nuts. But you've got, for sure you've got a guy in Andrew Marsh, but that's not enough for Bryce Underwood. You have got to surround him with weapons. And I think that even though you got some guys on the recruiting trail, some guys that had signed at wide receiver, Travis Johnson being one of those, a high four-star kid, these guys could possibly come in and make an impact. Again, we saw it with Andrew Marsh. True freshmen can do that. But Jared, I agree with the fans. They want to see Sherrone Moore dip into the portal and go get an experienced elite level wide receiver. How much stock do you put into that?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. If next year you want to make that playoff, he's got to have people to throw the ball to. He's got to have guys that can get open and consistently catch the ball. And a guy that people talk about, right? Nick Marsh. A lot of Nick Marsh, Michigan State guy. He had a problem with drops this year. I think he had 13 drops. I was doing some research on him, and I was like, oh my gosh, maybe we don't want that. I mean, he's a talent, no doubt. He had some weird non-talented kids, that's all I'll say, throwing the ball to him. But if it hits you in the hands and it's counted as a drop, you drop that. Like, that's on you, buddy. So I would still love to see him come. Yeah, I think, some great guys out in the portal. I think they talked about, I think it was the tight end from Penn State, Andrew Olesh, I believe. We targeted him.
Wasn't he committed to Michigan at one point?
Yeah, and we lost him.
Or did he not commit?
I think he was. Yeah, we were either super favored or he was committed. We thought we were going to get him and lost him at the end.
He was in the mix for sure.
Yeah, and he seems like a talented young kid, and he'll be a second year guy. And I got to put a lot of this on Bryce too, right? Like, to support your thing, we're paying you $12 million. Now you can go sell the program a little bit. Like, these kids. You played at camp with these kids when you did 5-on-5s or you did Elite 11. They brought these receivers in for these quarterbacks to throw to, right? Like, those guys, when you watch those camps, those aren't slouch receivers that 5-star quarterbacks are throwing to. They're 4- and 5-star receivers too. So Bryce knows these kids, you know what I mean? So he's going to have to start targeting some of these kids too and saying, hey, we're going to throw the ball. Such a lazy take.
Listen, and this is from the YouTube page. It's RG's mentality.
He's going to be the number one receiver in the portal, period. So if you want to go get portal talent, why would you not target the number one guy?
Well, even if he's not number one, because you're not really sure who's going to hop in at this point, right? There's still time to hop in. But the idea, he's going to be one of the top wide receivers in the portal. He's from the state of Michigan. He's familiar with the Michigan Wolverines. I just don't know why this is a lazy take. Now you might think like, look, his parents don't like Michigan. He's got no interest in Michigan, whatever. All I'm going to say about that is I don't rule anything out in today's era of college football. Nope. Not with NIL, not with the way things work. And we have seen crazier things happen. I mean, dude, Michigan has a former Spartan in their secondary right now who wore the Block M to his Michigan State graduation. Like, we live in strange times right now. So the idea of Nick Marsh ending up in Ann Arbor by the time this is all said and done, do you think it's improbable? Sure. Is it a lazy take? I don't think so. We want Michigan to go after the top wide receivers in the portal, regardless of who they are. And Nick Marsh is one of those guys. And so I think that it's absolutely a valid take. There's no question about it. I'm in the same boat. I 100% agree with fans, Jared. I don't have to sell this on you, man. Like, I've been talking about the passing game and wide receivers all season long. I just felt like they needed to get more out of that aspect of the offense. And I think going into year 2 for Underwood, year 3 for Sherrone Moore, it is critical. It's critical that this offense looks like it can function and compete with the best that college football has to offer. And the reason I say that is because we have now spent 2 years as fans sitting back on fall Saturdays and watching this offense struggle, watching this offense be inconsistent. Are there times where the running game looks absolutely dominant and you're like, yes, smash mouth football? There's no question. Yep. Justice Haynes was a home run threat. Jordan Marshall in between the tackles and the way that he could burst and get out in the open field. That's all fine and good. But there were too many times this year where the offense just hit a wall and couldn't do anything. And that was largely because there wasn't that other gear to go to. They couldn't really do anything consistently through the air. And that all came to a head against Ohio State, where after a little bit of success on the ground, the Buckeyes shut it down and Michigan couldn't do anything else. And so I think it is a top priority if you're Sherrone Moore and you're this coaching staff. You got to go into the portal and you have got to, whatever you sold to, what I forgot his name. What's his name? The Marchese?
Oh, you're Brady. Your guy.
Brady Marchese, right? Yeah.
I think it's Marchese. I don't know.
Marchese, whatever the hell it is. Whatever you're selling to guys like that, whatever you're selling to Travis Johnson, whatever you sold to Andrew Marsh, you got to go into the portal and you got to sell these veteran wide receivers on it. You've got to sell them on the opportunity to come play wide receiver at the University of Michigan, because Bryce Underwood needs weapons around him. And this passing game, which last I looked, after they played Ohio State, ranked 100th in the nation. That is just unacceptable. I get it. Young quarterback, young offense, young offensive line. There's no shortage of excuses that we could make for this year as to why the numbers look the way they look. But at the end of the day, being ranked 100 in the nation in passing offense at the University of Michigan is not acceptable. That number has to increase dramatically. Jared, I mean, we were talking about this earlier. You tried to sell me, by the way, on the fact that the 2023 passing game was 7th in the nation. It turns out it was like 87th in the
No, that was yards, wasn't it? So the whole thing, because JJ had such a high completion percentage, when you roll all the stats in,
sure,
it was like it came up with some crazy stat number. It was 7, but yeah.
But let me ask you this: Michigan 100th in the nation in passing offense this year. Where do you think this team needs to be next year? I mean, is top 50 acceptable? Top 40 acceptable? Where do you think the Michigan passing attack, given what they currently have and what you think they should add in the offseason, where do you think it should be in 2026?
I don't think you can put a number on it because why does it matter? What if Justice Haynes comes back, Jordan Marshall comes back, Savion Hyder's effective, and that they go with the 2023 model? Babalola comes back, Ty Haywood could be on the line. I'm just saying.
Jared.
They won a natty. How? They did it. JJ, that passing attack had 213 yards per game? And they won the natty.
You're never going to see that happen again. You're never going to see it happen again.
But you can't just say if they have to be 50th and they'll win. You don't know.
No, it's not about winning. I think it's more about what's acceptable.
It's not about winning.
No, what I'm saying is
wow.
It's about winning. It's all about winning.
I'm leaving.
The passing attack, what I'm saying is there needs to be a certain level of production that you get from that. And the reason I say that is because of what I said before. When you get to a situation where you play an elite defense, and with the 12-team playoff, if you get into the college football playoff, it's going to be a long road to a national championship. You are going to face elite defenses. You are going to have a balanced attack. So even if on your schedule you've got, I don't know, New Mexico State and Central Michigan and Arkansas State and some of these, throw Maryland on there, throw Michigan State on there, and you can run the ball and hammer the ball and pound the ball. Just because you can every down doesn't mean you should every down. And that's where I'm at, because true balance to me is critical for long-term success. And so, yes,
I mean, they threw the ball a lot, Chris. He threw for
they threw the ball a lot, but then also against Michigan State, they completely abandoned it in the second half. And then against Ohio State, you threw the ball 5 times in the first half. And so there was
accuracy is what you want.
Well, I want accuracy and I want consistency from week to week. I just want something that we know we can count on from the passing game from week to week. I think that that's important, because I think you don't ever want to go into a game thinking like, well, sometimes this works and sometimes this doesn't work. You want to know that no matter who we're facing, we've got an aerial attack to where we can make things work through the air. We've got the confidence to do that. We've got the track record to do that. And Michigan just hasn't had that for a really long time. It felt like they were starting to get it toward the end of the season with Andrew Marsh, and then it was a complete no-show in the final game against the Buckeyes.
An elite defense too. I mean, we got to say that, like, they're an elite defense. We're the strength was gone. No, and I'll tell you, I've been thinking about this too. So the 21, 22, 23 team, I was very involved with them with a lot of NIL stuff, and I got to go to a lot of practices, got to see a lot of behind the scenes stuff, off season. Basically, I mean, for a while there, we could just basically walk in whenever we wanted, right? It was we were the National Guard, we were partnered with Michigan, and I got to tell you, one of the most important positions on the coaching staff that I learned, and I had no idea, is that strength coach position, because during the times when the coaches can't be there, one coach can be around those players, and it's the strength coach.
Yep.
And Ben Herbert set that culture. For as much as people want to say Harbaugh set this, he didn't. That was Ben Herbert. And I told you a story when he dressed down Will Johnson in front of everyone and showed a highlight of Marvin Harrison burning him on a route. And the whole premise was, when they went to the weight room, they had to put their shoes a certain way, and they had to be touching the wall. Right? They go in the weight room without their shoes, and his were facing the wrong way. And Will Johnson, 5-star, great player, he destroyed him in front of everybody. If you can't put your effing shoes here, right, this is what's going to happen to you when you play Ohio State again. And he ran a play on, and he set that culture of accountability and structure. And I think that they kind of lost a little bit of that. You know what I mean? And it just doesn't. They didn't seem like they were as disciplined as some of the teams in the past, making silly mistakes. And Man, I wish we could bring Ben Herbert back. That's where
Well,
my rant's complete now. But
I'll just let me add on to that rant, even though we were on the wide receiver thing, because
sorry, I had to.
No, but you're right, because anybody who had the opportunity to just be in Ben Herbert's like atmosphere, just be in his right. There's some guys that just have that thing, right? You're around them. Like Jim Harbaugh had that when he walked into a room. It was just the energy felt a little bit different, right? When Ben Herbert walked into a room, particularly when he made eye contact with you, this guy was just like he was awesome. He was on another level, and I was fortunate to like be around him a little bit. And I remember when Jim Harbaugh left, and it was before he took Herbert with him. One of the things I said repeatedly on social media, I said it to multiple people. I said, you know what? At least we've still got Ben Herbert, and that gave me so much confidence. And when Ben Herbert left, you're right, Jared. That was the heartbeat of this team. That was the guy that just sort of he challenged everybody, right? He challenged not just your physical toughness, but your mental toughness. Like he would try to break you mentally. Yeah. Michigan players talked about it, having them show up incredibly early. There was things about, I don't know, walking around with like a big thing of ice or whatever it was. He just wanted to see what it would take to break you mentally. And there's a reason why that team was unbreakable. 2023, that team was unbreakable. Yeah. And that's what you need. So like when we talk about Sherrone Moore, when we talk about all the changes, you got, quarterback coach, you need to add wide receivers. You got to let your offensive coordinator do that. It is a multi-layered thing. And when you are a first-time head coach at the University of Michigan and you are trying to manage all these little parts and pieces, I think that it is critically important that as much as you can delegate to the experienced guys that you've put in place to do their thing, that you do that so that you can manage what are the critical components, which is what's the culture of the locker room like? What's the mentality of this team like, right? You are more so of a GM at that point, right? You got to trust the guys that you put in place. Correct. I think that's especially true for Chip Lindsey. It's true for Wink Martindale as well. I mean, think what you want about Wink Martindale, but this guy, talk about experience, how much football he has coached in his lifetime. These guys have been in those positions for a real long time. I would think it would be advantageous for Sherrone Moore to lean on them as much as possible. But in terms of the wide receivers, there's no question. And you're not going to get any pushback on it. And it's a reason why Jake Butt agrees with it. We all know you've got to surround Bryce Underwood with as many weapons as you possibly can. So if you are Michigan, if you're Sherrone Moore, if you are this staff, and you see an elite guy hit the portal, a wide receiver, tight end, whatever the case may be, you've got to go all in and do whatever you can do to bring that guy to Ann Arbor, because the more weapons you surround Bryce Underwood with, the better off this offense is going to be. You need true balance if you want to get to where you want to be, even if you've got that elite running game. Why not have both? Why not be elite on the ground and elite through the air? I mean, that seems like a pretty damn good recipe to win a national championship.
It might work.
It might work, right? Like, shut down the run. We're just going to throw it over the top. There's another team that I think kind of has that right now. Oh, yeah, Ohio State, right? Undefeated, number one in the country.
I don't think that their running game's elite.
Well, it sure as hell looked pretty damn elite with the Michigan Wolverines on Saturday. I'll tell you that. And I don't want to give them any credit, but damn it, it looked pretty damn good. It looked pretty balanced. Let's do this. We're at an hour and 2 minutes. Fudge, man. I feel like I just am a failure when it comes to these comments. And look, you can't even see the comments, and so you're pretty much no help.
I'm useless.
I am going to apologize. Oh, wait, there's little question marks. Okay, so there's little question marks.
That's called a question.
Somebody asked, no, but there's like a little icon that's a question mark, like in the box.
This
anytime.
Has been here the whole time?
I'm just now noticing it. Yeah, I had no idea that this was the case.
I'm so embarrassed right now.
Let's go to Rico.
Bunch of rookies.
Let's go to Rico from the Facebook page here. He asks, should Michigan get a quarterback to compete with Bryce Underwood to make sure he doesn't get lazy or arrogant? I mean, what do you mean? Should they go out and get like a legit guy that could compete for the starting job? If you're asking if they should do that, I don't think so, and I don't think you're ever going to see that happen. And I said this to somebody earlier. Yeah. There was somebody that was trying to Monday morning quarterback a fan and saying like, look, we should have started with Mikey Keene right out of the gate. And I think with the luxury of hindsight, sure. And if Mikey Keene had been healthy, probably the best route to go there, if he's healthy, with the luxury of hindsight, would have been you start Mikey Keene, a guy who's played a lot of football. He has over 60 starts in his career. He's thrown for over 8,000 yards. He's thrown for over 60 touchdowns in his career. He's not a guy that's going to get you to a national championship, but he is a steady hand in the offense. you probably start him and then you work Bryce Underwood into the offense as the season goes along. And then by the end of it, Bryce Underwood might be your guy. But that's not the way it played out. So when Bryce Underwood made the start week 1, and for anybody out there that wonders how this is going to go, and Jared, I'm going to say it one more time, with the amount of money that was invested into that quarterback, when you started Bryce Underwood week 1, he is your starter for 3 years. Under no circumstances there ever going to be a guy, unless there's an injury, under no circumstance will there ever be another quarterback taking snaps for the Michigan Wolverines, unless you're up 40 and it's mop up time or something like that. Bryce Underwood is going to be the guy here for the next 3 years. They have to make it work. So do you want to waste a roster spot on a guy who's going to come in here and compete for a job that he's never going to win? Absolutely not.
He wouldn't come anyways, right? Who would come?
He wouldn't come in. I mean, you get who's the guy they got from ECU? Jake Garcia, I think is his name, and Mikey Keene came over. I mean, I think those are the types of guys
going to the NFL. Yeah.
Right. You're not going to get a legit NFL prospect quarterback. Let's see here.
And I will share for the fans, if you haven't watched Paramount Plus 5-star, it's about Bryce and some other Big Ten guys. They show some of the practice footage of Bryce earning that spot, and the coaches are on there and they're like, listen, I mean, he won the spot. He in practice, he did the right things and he's the best guy, and I can tell they kind of didn't want him to win that spot right away. They probably kind of wanted to play Mikey Keene, but in the end, he won. He took the job. Like you said, right? You took the job. Now you got to perform. So great show, by the way, if you guys want to watch it. Great show.
Yeah. It's called 5-star, right?
Yeah, it's on Paramount Plus. We'll send them a bill afterwards because I said it like 3 times. So,
once again, I see the question. Please change your handle on here because I hate saying "kill yourself." But an individual from the YouTube page
I love it.
asks, will Sherrone actually go harder in the portal, or will he overestimate this roster again? That might be slightly unfair. I think Sherrone Moore did a pretty damn good job in the portal last year. Brought in Trey Williams, brought in Damon Payne. These were guys that played a lot of reps defensively. And then he went and got Justice Haynes, who is arguably the best running back in college football. And so I think, you added Donovan McCulley to the offense. And look, you can think whatever you want about Donovan McCulley, but he was a key part of that passing game, right? You take him out and there's one less serviceable wide receiver you have in this offense. Jared, I'll ask you. I mean, I think Sherrone Moore did a pretty good job in the transfer portal last year. I would have wanted to see more in the wide receiver room. Do you think Sherrone Moore goes hard in the transfer portal this offseason?
Yeah. I mean, and I think he did last year. You had Jordan Marshall coming off a 100-yard performance, 2 touchdowns, I believe, and an MVP against Alabama, and he went and got Justice Haynes anyways, right? Like, he didn't overestimate his roster there, and he had a commodity. We knew Jordan Marshall was going to be good this year, but he still went and got Justice Haynes. I think he goes and gets the best talent that's available, whether it's Nick Marsh, which is lazy as hell, or, anybody else. But no, I don't. I think I think he knows what he needs. He knows what he needs. You know what I mean? So got to go get him now.
Another question from the YouTube page. It's Wolverine Man for Life. Asks, how much time do they really coach the passing attack when you run the ball 40 times a game? I get what you're asking there. The overall point being, like, how much do you really work on it when so much of your offense relies on the running game? And Jared, I think that's where I have tried to plead my case to you, where even if you can run the ball 40, 50 times a game, it doesn't mean you should, because there's no reason why you can't be elite in both phases of the game. I think that's critically important to making your way through a 12-team playoff and eventually winning a national championship. And so I do think that we are going to see more balance moving forward, because I think for as much as Sherrone Moore wants to be that 2021 to 23 blueprint, I mean, dude, he was a part of building that. Yeah, he was the offensive line coach there. He saw it firsthand. He learned everything he knows pretty much as a head coach from Jim Harbaugh. And so it's not a big surprise that he's tried to replicate that, because the formula seemed to work during that time. But I think when you look at the pieces he's bringing in and the way he's sort of structuring this roster, I think there's a realization here that we're going to have more balance. And I think he found out the hard way against Ohio State that that's the case.
Well, and also, if this question is insinuating that at practice they just run the ball 80% of the time and then they only work on passing,
they do.
You've never been to a football practice, because you have positions within the practice, right? Like, they break up into positions. I went to practice when they were running the ball with Blake and Donovan 70% of the game. They still spent half the time on passing the ball, but that goes back to the very beginning of the podcast. where we bring that quarterback coach in, and the running backs are over here running through the holes, making their reads, and Bryce is over here learning his craft, right? Because when they break out, they don't have Bryce Underwood every time handing that ball to the running back. It's a coach or a grad assistant does a lot of it, right? Just like the snaps don't always come from the center. There's that grad assistant tossing the ball up. Like, yeah, they're not just not practicing passing.
Yeah, I think but that's the mentality, man. I think it's just
not what's happening though.
For so long, the passing game has just looked like a struggle for this team that I think people have just decided, like, Michigan.
They're not even practicing it anymore. They
must not practice it. Michigan just doesn't want to throw the ball. It just looks like a foreign concept when they're put in a position where they have to do it. And then there's times like against Northwestern, even where Bryce Underwood threw 2 picks, and it was like, holy shit, like that gear is there. You can see it. It's there. Andrew Marsh can be that guy. Bryce Underwood can be that guy, but the consistency just hasn't been there. Here's a comment or a question from Travis Connor. Good to see you in here from the Facebook page. He says, Devin Gardner as a quarterbacks coach, he's been doing great things with young kids. Look, I think a lot of Devin Gardner, I think he's great as an analyst. And if you listen to his podcast, him and Jake Butt, they do a phenomenal job of breaking down the game as 2 guys who, former college football players, played at a high level, who see things differently than most fans do. I don't necessarily think it would be a bad thing. The only thing I will say about this, full transparency, is, Devin Gardner also speaks his mind pretty freely, and says what he thinks. And, I don't know how that would work. I'll leave it at that. Is Devin Gardner qualified? Is he a great resource? He had a phenomenal relationship, I believe, with Dante Moore, and they were close, and he's been a mentor and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. I think in terms of like just being a quarterback's coach, I think, he would be one of those guys that could do that. I'm not saying that there's not other higher level guys that could fit that role, but certainly Devin Gardner could play that role.
I think you just need nothing against Devin Gardner. I don't think Devin Gardner is the guy for that job. I think it's a nuanced guy who brings in this new technology that breaks down every aspect of the game to the finite point where true elite quarterbacks begin to excel is when they learn every single little, you know what I mean? Like that, even building that clock in their head of when you get off a progression, right? JJ is struggling with that in the NFL right now, getting off progressions because he didn't really learn that at Michigan. And Bryce said, right, Michigan doesn't develop quarterbacks. Maybe he's not wrong.
Maybe Bryce was right. Maybe Bryce was right all along. Listen, Devin Gardner, here's I guess how I'll put it. I think Devin Gardner, in that position or in any position on your staff, you need like a company guy. You need a guy that's just going to get in and kind of just do whatever you need to be done as a head coach. And Devin Gardner is a guy who has strong opinions. And I think that's one of the great things about listening to him, right? He's got strong opinions about things. And I just think, I don't know, maybe I'm projecting. I don't know the game personally, but based on how I've seen him talk and sort of reflect on the game, I just think if he had a problem with something, it would be a problem. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. I think Devin Gardner would bleed over into, hey, well, here's what I think we should do for play calling. Whereas you want a guy who's just, I'm over here fine-tuning Bryce's mechanics, teaching him the game. I don't care what plays you call. I'm not even going to wear a headset during the game other than to talk to Bryce. I'm here to fix him, right? I fixed the engine of the Ferrari. You guys figure out how fast you're going to drive.
100%. I think that's a great way of putting it. And I don't think Devin Gardner is that guy. I think Devin Gardner is a guy
He'll
who
say some shit.
wants to have his opinions on things. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And that's why he's so great at being an analyst. That's why he's so great at breaking down film on his podcast. You know, he's doing pretty well in his spot. Let me see if I can get to a couple more here as we are now at an hour and 12 minutes. Jared, you good over there on time? I want to make sure you don't have like pizza rolls in the oven.
No, this is all overtime for me, buddy. I'm good. Just remember when the bill comes.
These are overtime hours right here. I'm not reading these before I put them up, so I hope that they are in line. Paul from the Facebook page, Paul Bickler says, why would Jesse Minter do that, though? Like from a career advancement standpoint, it doesn't make sense. I guess if this was
somebody was trying to bring him Jesse Minter back or make him the head coach.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Sorry, Paul. I'm not exactly sure what that's in reference to.
We don't think he would do it either, Paul.
I agree, Paul. There's no reason that he would do it.
From a career advancement standpoint, it doesn't make sense.
Not to me, it doesn't. CJ Frazier from the Facebook page, he says, you're a top wide receiver in the portal. Why are you picking Michigan? Jared, that's a good question. I'm going to ask you that. I mean, you're a guy who at one point in time in your life, you were You were somewhat athletic. You were somewhat athletic. Put yourself in the body of an athlete. Put yourself in the body of an elite wide receiver who's trying to make a decision. You know, you kind of seen how things have played out. University of Michigan comes calling to you. Why exactly, as an elite wide receiver, are you choosing the University of Michigan?
Well, a couple things. One, you got a quarterback, right? So if it's me back and I'm 21 years old now, and I actually was truly Division I elite, and I want to transfer, I've seen Bryce Underwood play. I've seen that he can make the throws. We've all seen those throws that we're like, holy wow. So we know he can make the throw. We've talked about, you know, a receiver's best friend being a running game too, right? Because now they can't double you as a receiver because they have to come down and protect that line against the running game. I think Chip Lindsey shows that he's willing to throw the ball. He's got a record of that in North Carolina. That was an elite offense. They were aerial and they were fun. And here's the other part. The position's wide open. If you come there, it's yours to lose. You're not coming to a team where you're competing for a wide receiver spot. If you're a semi-elite receiver and you're in the portal, you come to Michigan, you're walking up to the line starting day one pretty much. You know, learn the playbook and you're on the field. I mean, Andrew Marsh is got one position locked, but I don't think, is there any other position that's locked on that field in wide receiver?
No, I mean, not anybody. That's a sure thing. Not anybody.
Nope, that's what I'm saying. So if you're that top dog and you want to come over and you're gonna be that guy, and I think that's how Sherrone Moore needs to sell it. And I think he's got to go tell these kids that we're gonna throw the ball, we're gonna let Chip Lindsey take over, and he's got to stick to it though. That's the problem, you know. And I wonder if kids are hesitant, you know, because they see this podcast, they see Chris Breiler, you know,
obviously they're
world-renowned Chris Breiler saying, "Hey, Sherrone Moore takes over the game plan," and then they don't throw, and this kid's probably gonna be like,
right.
"Damn, I don't know."
I've actually had people blame me for like recruiting issues, recruiting struggles. Think that somehow, like, I'll never forget. This is a complete side note. I'll never forget. It was Illinois 2022. It was in Ann Arbor. It was that freezing ass cold Illinois. Right?
Blake got hurt.
Michigan was close to losing that game. And I remember I got a message from somebody. I'll never forget this. I got a message from somebody blaming me for pushing the idea that JJ McCarthy should be the starter, because if Cade had remained in that starting position, Michigan wouldn't be right now, you know, fighting for its life against Illinois. So like, there are some people out there that think I've got a lot of influence on what happens with the program. Maybe they're right, Jared.
You don't. I never heard your name mentioned once in that.
You and me both. I've been thrown around a couple of times, but I've never heard my name mentioned, at least in other ways, in invitations. CJ, I guess I'm a little less idealistic about this thing and a little more, I guess, just practical about the real situation and where we're at in college football. If I'm a top wide receiver in the portal, why am I picking Michigan? I'll tell you why I'm picking Michigan. I'm picking Michigan because Larry Ellison gave me a call and made me an offer. I'm picking Michigan because they offered me some stock options. I'm picking Michigan because they gave me, maybe like a share of some sort of company or whatever. And you saw this with Blake Corum, right? Like Blake Corum with his NIL thing was really on the cutting edge of like, I don't just want money, I want to be invested in things. And so I think that from that standpoint, Michigan has a lot to offer. You get a Michigan degree, you're set up for life. You know how it is, dude. When you're not a Michigan graduate, you're like on the outside. But if you're part of that elite group, if you're part of that exclusive club, they take care of their own. And there's a lot to be said for having that Block M degree. And so that's a part of it. And I think that when you think about that in terms of like your life and how things are going to play out, there's no guarantee that if you go to Georgia, even if you go to Ohio State, that things are going to work out in the NFL. But if you got a Michigan degree and you got stock options and you got connections with people who are like in really high places, like you can sell that in today's college football. And to me, the biggest concern is what you said, Jared. Like they can paint me a cool picture of what my role is going to be in the offense. But when we get against Ohio State, am I going to get 0 targets? Like I'm concerned about that. And so I'm sure that there's very real conversations that are going to have to take place. And Jared, I said this to you during the season, like one of the biggest downsides outside of like the lack of production to not using the passing game during the season is like when you go on the recruiting trail and you go in the portal and you're trying to land these guys, when there's not much film to put on, you kind of just got to find a different way to sell it. And I think it just makes your job that much more difficult. But certainly Michigan is not a program that's starved for resources. Let's try to get a couple more questions before we get out of here, Jared, just because I want to make sure I do right by the people that have spent, over an hour in here and have joined us.
Appreciate you.
again, you guys make this such an enjoyable experience. I'm so glad that we're back doing these lives. Jared, I mean, I don't even know if people realize, like, you were the one who pretty much convinced me to go back to doing lives. We sat out front of my house and you're like, hey man, you got to fire up the lives again. I'm like, I don't know if there's much interest, whatever. And here we are.
Tens of people watching us now.
Tens of people here. The live numbers have been pretty good so far.
Yeah,
I'm pretty impressed with
appreciate
the way things look. Yeah, for sure. Franco 2705. Is it Franco or Frank Aro from the Frank Aro? Jesus, I think I need like bifocals at this point. I need bifocals and maybe a hearing aid. Frank Aro 2705 from the YouTube page says, how much NIL money do we think we can spend? Seems like there's only a finite amount of cash to go around. Do we have any left in the portal? Jared, I'll let you answer that first. How much money do you think Michigan has to spend?
There's no cap to it. I mean, you got the richest man in the world. Probably, I think he's second now, Larry Ellison, donating money. I think what happens is, honestly, they go back. Sherrone builds a roster of, hey, these are the guys I want, and this is where I think that they're at. Because that's the other part, right? There's no cap. There's no salary cap. So it depends. It's set based on what other teams need. Right, so if you got a Georgia that they had a dip in their wide receiver production, and you're competing against a Georgia, all of a sudden they got some resources, so not that number bumps up, and that's the hard part. A lot of times, from what I've heard of these stories of NIL, is they don't know. You don't know what the other team offered, because I'm telling you right now, that show, the 5-star, Bryce's dad's talking about Michigan offered twice what LSU offered. I don't think that there's bad business people in Michigan, which tells me they didn't know what LSU offered, right? Because if LSU's offering 6, you don't offer 12. I mean, you go 8, you go 9, or they just wanted to blow his mind.
I was going to say, or they knew that it was going to take something like substantial to really swing that. Think, you never know.
Yeah, you don't. But you leave a kid with this too. Hey, here's where we're at. But you can come back and tell us where you're at, right?
I know, but the problem is in today's day and age of recruiting, if you send a guy out the door without a commitment, you're never sure if he's coming back.
Well, you leave it. That's what I'm saying. No, you leave your on the table here. Then that's how it works. Savion Hyder, what did his dad say? Why didn't he sign yesterday? Working through some things.
Yeah,
that was NIL. And then if you go on Champion Circle today, guess what they had? They had autograph stuff. They have his merch.
That NIL shop was up pretty quick.
Pretty quick. And that's probably some of the nuances they're working through, right? Like, what am I getting? How am I? So now this kid's in high school getting paid already. But I don't think that there's a real limit. And then now you got revenue share that they have to put in there anyways. So that increased it a little bit, I saw Yaxel Lendeborg probably got $3.1 million this year. Like, that's incredible for a basketball player at Michigan. I never thought I'd see that day.
Especially considering 4 years ago, I sat in a room with Juwan Howard and he was begging for money, begging for NIL. Yep. He looked at the media people and said, can anybody help? We need it. We need it. Right. And so we're in a completely different place now with college athletics. And he's probably looking at Dusty May like, I'm sure there's one part of him that's like happy with the program. But there's probably another part that's like, you son of a bitch, you got $30 million to build a roster. Yeah. I couldn't have done that and won championships, but no, I'm kidding, of course.
I don't think that there's anything there, though. I've been heavy with the NIL thing. I think that Sherrone can do what he did with Bryce and go to the donors and go to the Champion Circle and all these folks and say, hey, that's a guy we need. So we have to make him a serious offer right now before we lose him.
The only hurdle I see is you have the NIL clearinghouse now, and are people even taking that shit seriously? Because I don't hear much about it. But
what are they going to do?
Exactly. Like you're supposed to filter every NIL deal through this clearinghouse that like reviews it and approves it, and the money that you're offering has to be in line with what the market value is. It can't be like some exorbitant amount of money that just doesn't make sense. Yeah. But without getting in the weeds, Frank Aro from the YouTube page, I'll just say this. If there's one thing I am absolutely not worried about when it comes to the Michigan football program, it's the amount of NIL resources that they have. There is no finite amount. And if there is a guy that they find that they want bad enough, they'll find a way to get the money for it. There's absolutely no question about that.
Agreed.
Let's try to get one more question here before we get out of here.
Make it a good one.
I'm going to make it a good one. I want to make it a juicy one, Jared. Something spicy. Something salacious, maybe. Let's end the pod on some controversy here.
Controversy. Do aliens exist?
Do they exist?
That's a yes.
Honestly, I think we are the aliens. We are the aliens.
We don't belong here. That could be
I
fair.
think we came from somewhere else. That's what I think. I think we were put here
for this. We're really impressing somebody.
Or this is what they wanted, right?
Like, dude, this is what they're doing. They're
looking at a couple of dinks here on a podcast saying like, that's why we planted those things down there. They're doing it.
Those reached who are fulfilling their destiny.
Peak human, development here. Lots of comments, man. You know what?
I like how the fans, they talk to each other. They had their own thing going.
That's true. Here's a good one to end on.
Okay.
Here's a good one to end this one on. Jared, you might hate it, but I think it's a good one.
Great. It's probably terrible.
Matthew Bursley from the Facebook page, he says, let's say Sherrone can't win the big games next year. Let's say Sherrone Moore can't win the big games next year. How many years does he get to prove himself? Jared, you and I were firing text messages back and forth in a heated debate. You said that I was cynical. You said that I'd been in the media for too long, that I've lost my sparkle. I've lost my shine. I'm just Mr. Negativity. Jared, I want you to start this. I want you to be the first one to answer. Again, I'll ask, let's say Sherrone can't win the big games next year. Then what? How many years does he get to prove himself?
So he goes 8-4 is what we're saying. Basically, he loses the 4 tough games that he should lose, right? The 4 tough games that we're pointing out, right? Indiana, what were we saying? We said Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. So he goes 8-4. I think he gets one, and for me, he gets one more year, just because I understand recruiting and I understand the building of that team. Now, I don't think he's going to go 8-4. I really don't. I truly believe you're going to see an increase from Bryce Underwood this year to Bryce Underwood next year. I the game's going to slow down, and because you hear elite athletes at every level always talk about that second year when the game slowed down. That's not. They all aren't saying it just for fun. It's truly what happens. The game slows down, right? Now you can talk about the sophomore slump; those things happen too. But I think he gets to Bryce's junior year. I really believe it, because without him, Bryce isn't here. And again, go back to that show. They talk about behind the scenes of how they got Underwood, and Sherrone brought him into his office and said, "You're not leaving the state of Michigan. I will never let a talent like you leave the state of Michigan. So what do we have to do?" And so Bryce Underwood's here. Imagine this team right now, this year, without Bryce Underwood. I mean, I think they win 7 games. I really do. I think they won a couple of games because he was there. I truly believe that. So I think he's done a lot of good things. I think he still has some big changes to make. I think he's got to look at his staff a little bit. You and I have talked about that. I think he's got to show that he's willing to make the hard call. I think firing JB wasn't a hard call, but I think he's got to make some more changes. But he's done so many good things too. Unless they implode next year, right? Like James Franklin did. Like if that happens,
sure.
If you've lost the team, which James Franklin, you could tell he lost that team at some point. It was all gone. Everything was gone, right? Like,
I mean, things went sideways, but it also seems like a lot of those guys liked James Franklin, and when they let him go, it was like a lot of the players did not agree with it. And
liking the coach and having him have proper amount of
100%,
2 different
100%.
things, right? Like you can love the coach. If you ain't listening to him, you really don't love the coach. And
I've said that about Sherrone too. You can be a player's coach. You can be a guy that people love to be around. But the one thing about Jim Harbaugh, like people talk about how he was odd, he's a little bit different. You never knew what he was going to say. That guy had command, right? He was like the Nick Sabans of the coaching world, where they're a general when they walk in, the Urban Meyers of the world, right? They walk in. Yeah. And if you're dicking around as a team, when Jim Harbaugh walks in, or when Nick Saban walks in, or Urban Meyer walks in, you're not doing that anymore, right? And let's be fair, there's only so many guys like that in the coaching stratosphere that really carry that amount of weight, and everybody else is sort of trying to get themselves there. And certainly you can't expect Sherrone Moore now to be where Jim Harbaugh was when he was here.
But that's where that building your staff goes into, because you look at the coaching trees of Nick Saban and who else did you mention? Jim Harbaugh has a pretty good coaching tree. Urban Meyer, good coaching. Like they had some badass assistant coaches.
Yeah.
Has Michigan had a badass assistant? I don't think. I mean, Tony Alford's pretty good. I think he's going to be the running back coach of the year.
Jed Fish is doing okay with Washington,
but he wasn't Sherrone Moore. Look at Sherrone Moore's staff right now.
Sure.
And his staff right now. Do you see an elite guy?
Well, and that's one of the things that Jake Butt had brought up on the podcast is like, Jim Harbaugh had a whole host of resources and coaches he could reach out to sort of build what he was doing. I mean, how many times did he lean on his brother John in the NFL and like bring in this, where did Jesse Minter come from? Where did Mike McDonald come from? Like these were all connections that Jim Harbaugh had. And Jake Butt's point was Sherrone Moore really doesn't have that quite yet. And so in terms of building your staff, right, you're trying, Ron Bellamy's been there for a while. Grant Newsome is a guy, like these are all guys who have been in the program, but in terms of like really going out and branching out and bringing in some elite guys, he doesn't have the network here. Here's what I'll say about where I stand on this, Matt. I think that if he doesn't win the big games next year, regardless of what I think should happen, I think he'll be gone. Because I think that's where we're at in today's era of college football. And there's just some numbers. I sent these numbers to you, Jared, and I think that this helps put things in perspective to kind of give you an idea of what things have looked like over the last 2 years. And so I get that we're not at the end of the year right now, so this is a little bit skewed in terms of the AP poll. But through 2 years, Sherrone Moore is 2-9 against teams that finish in the AP top 25. So I'll say that again. We're in week 15, but the teams that are going to finish in the top 25, like if they lose in the coming week here, whatever bowl game they have, they're not going to fall out of the top 25. So Sherrone Moore is 2-9 versus teams that finish within the top 25. He's 3-5. Think about this. He's 3-5 in 2 seasons against Big Ten teams that finish with a winning record in conference play. So he's 3-5 against the top tier, the upper tier of the Big Ten conference. These are teams that finish with a winning record in conference play. And 4 of his wins, Jared, 4 of his wins within conference play in 2025 came against teams, Big Ten teams, that had a combined record of 4-32 in conference play. So 4 of his 7 wins in the conference came against teams with a combined record of 4-32. And that's why 9-3 feels so hollow, because those 3 big games that were on the schedule, Oklahoma, USC, Ohio State, Michigan did not look competitive in any of those. So to Matt's question, if he can't win the big games next year, what happens? I don't think he gets another year. But I'll say this, if you don't win them, you better damn sure make sure you look competitive. Like you belong on the field with these teams. You can't get blown out by 18 points. You can't go, 2 of 15 on third down. At the very least, if Sherrone Moore is not going to win some of those big games next year, Michigan has to look like it belongs on the field with that upper level of competition. If they get the doors blown off on the road against Oregon, on the road against Ohio State, you struggle against Penn State. If that starts to happen, you lose again in your own building to Oklahoma. If you start to see that happen next year, it's really hard for me to see a scenario where he gets a year 4. And again, it's not about whether or not I think that's right or wrong. It's just where I think we are in today's era of college football. When you're the head coach at the University of Michigan, it is a pressure cooker. Ask Rich Rodriguez, ask Brady Hoke, ask Jim Harbaugh, who had his contract cut in half before he ultimately took Michigan on a national championship run. Sherrone Moore is no different. The expectation is incredibly high. And at the end of the day, with an expanded college football playoff field, the expectation is that the Wolverines are in it every single year. So Jared, 132, or I'm sorry, not 132 minutes, an hour and 32 minutes
92
on the podcast. That's a podcast record for me. I have never gone an hour and 32 minutes, Jared. I'm more than happy that I went an hour and 32 minutes with you and the good folks here tonight. So I appreciate it.
You can't help yourself with this.
I can't help myself, but I am.
Everyone's impressed, Chris. Everyone's real impressed with your
stamina. I'm grateful for everybody who hung in here for an hour and a half and allowed us to go through the show. This is something that I want to continue, in the coming weeks as well. Jared and I have talked about it. We do want to start to transition over to basketball as well and have those conversations. And I think it's just good to hop on here and interact with Michigan fans and keep this thing going. And so the plan right now, depending on your schedule, Jared, we'll talk about it, but the plan right now is to be back here Monday, 6 p.m. We'll see what we have to talk about at that point. But until then, I appreciate all the interaction here. You guys were absolute rock stars hanging in here for as long as you did. I don't know how many comments we had, but it was more than I could keep up with. So once again, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you, Jared. We will see you back here Monday, 6 p.m. Until then, take care.